unmute just to make sure that we can hear you?
Hey, Kevin, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
All right,
Appreciate you.
brother.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and call the roll. Paul Cash,
Present.
Gordon Cunningham,
Here.
Terry McCulley,
Here.
and y'all, Damon sent me a text over the weekend and he's not going to be able to be with us. David Remy,
Here.
Drew Kraft,
Here.
and Brooke Tharp.
Here.
Okay, Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum and we should be good to go for the meeting.
We will call the meeting to order. Reading of the minutes or motion to dispense.
Move they be dispensed.
Second.
We have a motion second to dispense the meetings. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and just to clarify, the meetings that you dispensed and approved were for our last board meeting of 6/20 of 24. Okay. Mr. Chair? Terry's gone? We've lost our chair. Well, listen, if nobody objects, I know where we were headed. As soon as he's able to get back on, we'll let him back in. He was going to turn it over to me so we could move through our agenda, the two items that are on our agenda. If there's no objections, we'll go ahead and do that. Looked like he was in his vehicle. I'm not sure where he is this morning. I know Terry's taking on Arkansas. I don't know how many states he's working in now, but who knows where he is. But if there's no objection, we'll go ahead and move on.
Sounds good.
Everybody good? Okay. So the two things that are on the agenda, if you all recall, last year, probably in our March or our June meeting, we started the process of trying to put two new rules in place. One had to do with distance, and the board decided to adopt pamphlet 58 distance regulations. In addition to that, we were having trouble with some orphan tanks that have been left in people's yards for sometimes in excess of a year. And so you started the process of putting a rule in place that would make sure the tank and the equipment is picked up. And it was referred to as the orphan tank rule. You all remember those rules. They were sent, the first thing that happened, they were sent over to E&E, and the secretary looked at them and approved them, and they were sent to the governor's office. And they've been at the governor's office for quite some time. We got word week before last, maybe 3 weeks ago, that the Governor Sanders had approved those to move forward. And so we need a motion to continue that promulgation process. And I just want to quickly move through that. It's been some time. And I just want to remind everybody what that entails. And in the documentation that I sent you, in the draft of the code book, I showed where this would be inserted into our code book. And it will be in the green. It's the green references. And I'm not going to hit every single page. You all can go back and look at that. But the changes in our code book that are affected by these two rules are on page 37, 63, 68. I just heard a ding. Maybe Terry's back with us. He is. 68, 69, 70, 74, 76, and 83. Those are the pages that there'll be some adjustment to allow these two rules into our code book once they fully pass the promulgation process. it starts here on page 37. The board adopts by specific reference the distance provisions established by NFPA 58 in its 2020 edition. Nothing in these sections or subchapters shall prevent the board from adopting additional requirements, whether more or less stringent, to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the general public. Any documents or language incorporated by reference into these rules shall be part of these rules. So that was the specific language that we use dealing with the distance. If you all recall, there's always been some ambiguity with our rules when it comes to definition of an important building. You know, we can pretty much tell what our property line is. We can tell all kinds of things, but then we say it's got to be so many feet from an important building. What's an important building? NFPA 58 in the annex, the 6.4.1.1, it kind of defines what they believe is an important building, and then you chose to include some additional language, and I just want to run through that. Any building wired for electricity, a building wired for electricity consists of an electrical wiring system that distributes energy to be used for equipment, lighting, or appliances in the building. Wired for electricity also involves the proper installation, operation, and existence of electrical outlets, switches, breakers, meter base, and different electrical circuits for the building. So that was additional language that you all chose to incorporate into the rule that's in addition to pamphlet 58 in their annex. Wanted to make sure everybody was good with that. Okay, let me find the orphan rule. I went ahead and included some other things in this draft so you would see how it would work. We had a couple of rules that have already been properly promulgated that had never been inserted into the code. I took the opportunity to go ahead and do that. I think it's going to be down in the container. Let me see. 63. Okay, nope, that's distance rule. That over 2,000 on page 63 was distance. 68. This is also dealing with the distance, the language adopted by reference. This is inserted into the container section. And then we adopted some tables and we adopted figures that are in 58. That continues on page 69. This is all dealing with the distance. Adopting the distance rules in 58. Again, on 74 is similar. 76 is similar, distance. Okay, on 83, here is the second rule. This has to do with the containers. This is in section 19HH, LP gas containers out of service. LP gas containers out of service. When the board receives a complaint concerning an out of service container, the board or its director will notify the permit holder that it must retrieve the container and corresponding equipment within 30 days from initial receipt of notification. Notification will be made by phone in both regular and certified U.S. mail. Permit holders who fail to retrieve the container equipment within 30 days of receipt of notification will be fined $50 per day for each day beyond the 30-day period until the container and equipment are retrieved, and may be subject to injunctive action to have the container and equipment removed. Wanted to once again remind you all about this rule. So those are the two rules that we need a motion on for this special meeting. And I didn't want to wait till our next meeting, so I appreciate everybody taking the time this morning. We need to go ahead and continue these promulgation. Both of these are not rules, and we're going to talk about the adoption of 58 in just a second. Of course, if we do that, then the adoption of the distant rules only, pulling that out, will it won't be in effect any longer. But currently that's not the case, so we need to move forward with these two rules. Do any of y'all have any questions concerning moving forward with the promulgation of these two rules after getting the approval from the governor to do that?
I have none.
None here.
No,
No.
Okay.
no.
Based on that, Mr. Chair, I would like for you to ask for a motion for moving forward with those two. You need to unmute yourself when you do that, though.
Excuse me.
You're
Do we have
good. I think you asked for the motion, right, Terry?
I did. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm having some technical difficulties this morning.
We can hear you now. Paul, are you with us?
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion. The LP Gas Board approves the proposed amendment of the distance rule and the rules in regard to the out of service containers, which have been approved by the governor's office. Furthermore, the board also approves the initiation of the rulemaking to approve these rule amendments pursuant to the Administrative Procedures Act.
I second it.
We have a motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Falzer, motion carries.
Very good. I appreciate that. Okay. And you all, there was some exact wording that we needed to use there. And I appreciate Paul taking the time to make the motion and putting it in that language. That's exactly what we needed. Okay. So at our last board meeting, the board made a decision to investigate the possibility of adopting pamphlet 58 as our rules. And I want to go back up to page 8. This language I've put in here for your viewing, and it starts on page 8. See, that is 13. Let's go back up here. Okay, so adopting 58, of course, will not only replace our rules, but it will also affect what we do as a safety board to make sure that the industry is safe. Training. And that comes from section 4.4 in NFPA 58. And it reads something. It says something. And I was going to read that to you, but I don't know what I did with it. And I apologize for that. But it stipulates that there'll be initial training, there'll be continued training, and it lays out that every 3 years there'll be refresher training. So we needed to bring our language for training into agreement with 58 prior to us adopting. So in statute, the place where this fits, in my opinion, is under 1575-108, dealer safety meetings for employees. This is dealing with training for employees. That is on your page 7 in the draft that I sent out. But the language that I would like you to look at is on page 8, and we'll just run through this. The board shall have the power to require initial, reoccurring, and annual training for employees for all permit holders. And I'm old, so I'm putting on my glasses. Permit holders under this section. Permit holders must provide proof of training when submitting annual permit renewals. Certified employees who fail to attend required training are subject to certification, suspension, or revocation. All right, and now we outline the 3 different training areas. Initial training. Initial training is required of new certified employees of all permit holders. Initial training must consist of the following. A, Class 1 employees, at least 30 hours of board-approved, instructor-led classroom training. Training is required within 1 year. That is similar to what we're doing now with our 40-hour school. We reduced that to 30 hours, and I'm sorry, I need to go back and state, one of the things the board did at our last meeting in looking at this is approved a subcommittee that set in conjunction with the association. And Paul Cash and Terry McCulley were part of that. This language was developed with those two, with the association, Neil Pretty and Ken DeWitt. And so this is what we came up with. Still allowing 1 year for employees to go through this training, everybody thought was a good thing because it's so expensive to hire somebody. And this gives you time to understand if this employee is going to be a keeper or not, right? So we left that in there, reduced it by 10 hours. Class B, class 2 through 10 employees, at least 6 hours of board-approved training. Did not designate what that looks like. We just left it as that. We'll have some flexibility. C, board-approved curriculum based on national industry safety protocols. So our training is going to be based on a national standard like CTEP. Successful completion of the curriculum will be demonstrated by a test score of at least 70% based on an examination. That is congruent with the rest of the nation in what they're doing with CTEP. And then C, training may be provided by a board-approved, recognized safety organization, right? And I think that it is the intention of our board to work with our association to provide this training to the industry. They would be the recognized safety organization. All right. Are there any questions concerning the initial training?
So our 40-hour school would suffice as that. Is that correct?
It would be instead of 40, it would be 30.
30.
Right. The association would do that training, and it would be, we wouldn't necessarily use the exact same training manual that we've got. It could be the basic introduction that CTEP teaches, but it would be over the course of 30 hours.
And would that be in addition to the 40-hour school, or would that?
The 40-hour school as enumerated in statute would go away.
Okay.
This would replace it.
And this would be all initial new employees.
That's correct. That's correct. Mm-hmm. All right. Any other questions? Okay, so that would be the initial training. Reoccurring training. Reoccurring training required every 3 years for all certified employees or permit holders who have previously completed the initial training. So to do the reoccurring, you have to go through the initial. Reoccurring training must consist of A, at least 6 hours of board-approved, instructor-led classroom training. All right, so that's just 6 hours every 3 years. Board-approved curriculum based on national industry safety protocols. Again, we want to adopt the CTEP. Actually, CTEP is going away. They're in the process of replacing it. I had a good meeting with my counterpart in Missouri and also in Oklahoma, and we discussed training, and they're working on replacing their CTEP now. And it's going to be a lot of the same training. It'll just be under another name. But we want to move to a national industry safety a protocol. Successful completion of the curriculum will be demonstrated by a test score of at least 70%. We're keeping that the same for the recurring. Training may be provided by a board-approved, recognized safety organization. And again, the intent here is to partner with the association. They would be the recognized safety organization. And this mirrors what's going on in those states that have already adopted 58. This is the type of training that they do. Any questions concerning the reoccurring training?
So anybody that's already been through the school, they would fall under this this section for
That's
reason.
exactly right. In order to maintain their certification, they would be required to do the reoccurring training.
Okay.
It would be a every 3 year type situation. And it's my understanding, and I think it's really good, that this reoccurring training can be pinpointed. If somebody's driving a bobtail, they don't need to go to the serviceman's reoccurring training. You know, it would be based on their job description. They would be able to do that. Any additional questions concerning that? Okay. The last part of that is annual training. We have our annual safety meeting. And the discussion that led us to include this was along the lines of, and this came from the dealers, from Paul and Terry and Ken. Neil pretty actually, Terry, can you unmute for just a minute?
Sir,
Was Neil on the call? I think he was.
I don't
Yes.
think Neil was on the call, was he?
Well,
I don't think he was. I don't think he was there. I think he couldn't make it or something happened.
I
Me and Terry.
remember, okay. I remember visiting, but everybody that was there, they had this feeling that our industry, the employees in the industry really enjoy getting together and having time to visit and to train together for, you know, that period of time. The safety meetings are something of an oddity when you look at putting them on, when you look at disseminating the information. It's not an easy deal, right? It's costly, but everybody seems to enjoy that time. And so this is what we've come up with to be included for annual training. Annual training consists of at least one general safety meeting attended by all certified employees of permit holders within each 12-month period. So we're back to once annually a safety meeting. Annual training must consist of curriculum based on industry protocols. Permit holders shall have broad discretion in determining annual safety meeting curriculum. Testing and scoring is not required but encouraged. Permit holders must document the topic, date, and attendance of each annual training session. And I got to scroll down just a minute. And retain a copy of the curriculum for inspection. Training may be provided by a board-approved recognized safety organization. So what this language does, when it comes to our safety meetings, what we're saying here, you have a choice. We can either put on some safety meetings around the state that people can attend in person, put on by the association or organization. You know, it's our intent that the association do this on behalf of the board. Or you can have that safety meeting and hold it yourself. And you can have broad discretion on what you want to train your employees on, and that will suffice. At these safety schools, they've never been pass fail. They've always been information dissemination. We want to just keep people up to speed, keep their mind, top of mind, some topics. And so we've always tested, but we've always had them grade the own test. And then we'd go over each one. So this kind of allows either or. The owner of a class 1 permit holder can hold this with their employees themselves, or they can have those employees be a part of a safety meeting that's held in close proximity like we've done in the past. Either one. Now, obviously, when you have somebody traveling, somebody doing the training, somebody putting this on, nothing's free, right? So while there might not be cost involved with putting it on locally, if we chose to get together, the dealers, the permit holders could expect some cost associated with that. Don't know what that looks like right now, but any questions concerning the annual training and what we're trying to do there?
Is this something that CTAP could provide information, say, for example, that we could hire you as an example to come and present and train?
I think that would be, yeah, this is so open and broad. All we're saying is that you got to have a safety meeting once a year. It has to be on national protocol. Testing is encouraged, but not necessary, and you have to retain the attendance and the subject matter on file for inspection. That's the only requirements for this safety meeting. Outside of that, it can be done anyway.
Okay.
I'm sorry, one more question.
ma'am.
In the requirements for the annual training, there's no specified requirements on topics to be covered? Did I miss that?
What we say in A, curriculum must be based on industry protocols. All right. So that would be, that would dictate the subject matter, would have to be based on, CTEP. There's other industry protocols that go outside of the LP gas that deal specifically with DOT. It could be on that. But they would have to be industry protocols. They would have to be, something that's germane to the industry.
Right, I guess that's my question. So if they have a safety meeting once a year and they cover DOT, they're never actually covering those industry protocols.
Well, the industry does, we would consider DOT part of their industry protocols because of we're a hazmat industry. So based on that, that would be fine. The board we would look at that, a DOT, a safety meeting on DOT, we'd be fine with that.
It's basically just what we're doing now, correct?
It is.
Okay, I was just trying to make sure that we weren't creating a mechanism in which people only repeated one training a year and then they were missing some critical components that they needed to work into that program, but just because that's what they had last year and they repeated it. That's kind of the genesis of my question.
I understand, Brooke, and that's very possible that could happen. The initial training that we're requiring, the refreshing training that we're requiring, is really what we're hanging our hat on when we're talking about keeping the public safe. This annual training safety meeting is to encourage a topical discussion of something that surrounds safety. So, Brooke, even if they revisited something every 12 months, depending on what it is, it could be a good thing. But I understand your concern. But I think that we cover the crux of keeping industry personnel and consumers safe with what we're requiring with the initial and the reoccurring.
Hey, Kevin, that's very clear. I appreciate you kind of bringing all three of those back together for me.
And I
Thank you.
appreciate you asking the question. That we are a safety board. That's what we're here to do. That's our number one reason for being. Okay, I'm going to move down to page 13 here. 1, 2, 3, 4. We just got 4 pages where we're looking at this, and man, Terry, I hope my computer's not decided to update. It is crawling. Let me go up here and see if I can be a little quick. Yeah, this is a little quicker right here. Okay, so so that's the language that dealt with training, and that was a large component of why we're moving or thinking about moving to 58. Where that actual language that designates us doing that would come in 1575-207. That's on page 12, rules and regulations. And if you move down to page 13, you'll see where the language that that we put in here for you all to review. And this is it under D. Effective July 1st, 2025, the Arkansas LP Gas Board hereby adopts by reference the National Fire Protection Association Manual 58 Liquified Petroleum Gas Code 2024 edition, designated 58 as the standard for storage and handling of liquefied petroleum gases. E, effective July 1st, 2025, the Arkansas LP Gas Board hereby adopts the National Fire Protection Association Manual 54, National Fuel Gas Code 2024 edition, designated NFPA 54 as the standard for the installation of liquefied petroleum gas appliance and piping. All right, so we got 58 outside, we got 54 inside. F, the board may adopt subsequent editions of these standards or additional NFPA or other industry codes by rule. G, the board may make modifications, additions, or deletions in the adoption standards by rule, which will take precedence over the original material. So that language purposely was put in there. Number one, we're adopting a specific edition. We're not saying the latest, right? Because then we are saying that whatever these people want to do, you know, somewhere outside the state are going to affect what we do inside the state. We are looking at a specific edition and saying we're adopting these rules. These are going to be our rules. And then we're going to clip out of some of them. I'll get to that in just a second. But rather than do the latest edition, the subcommittee thought it would be better if we adopted a specific edition. And I agree with that. And the same thing for 54. Are there any questions about adopting a specific edition as opposed to using language, the latest edition?
No.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. And then we put this language in here, we may adopt subsequent editions. As you all know, there's another pamphlet out there that is strictly dealing with I just want to call it the marijuana industry. I don't know what else to call it, but NFPA 58 is working on rules and regulation that will affect those people that are using pure propane to extract THC from marijuana to be used in whatever they use it in, you know, cookies, gummy bears, I don't know. But it's a whole separate industry. And these people started popping up. And the first thing that started happening, people were blowing themselves up because they didn't know what they were doing. There was nothing regulating it. And I don't know if you all know Don Crowder with Corkin. He sits on that committee and they're close. I think they're close. They should have already had that pamphlet out. But that's just an example that NFPA might come out with in the edition that we would also want to adopt. So we put that in statute. Now all we have to do is, if we want to adopt something, we can do that by rule. And then the board may make modifications, additions, or deletions in the adopted standard. I want to just quickly move through some suggestions there. So think about 58 is going to replace all of our rules that come later in the code book. All right, on page 18, we took this opportunity to do one other thing. Because one of the reasons that we're going to 58 is because every state that we touch is already a 58 state. We get into to reciprocating with employees, and this would just be an example. A dealer in the state of Arkansas is close to the line. Maybe they've got other locations in Oklahoma, Mississippi, Missouri, somewhere. And they pick up a large customer, and it's going to take a week to set 30,000 gallon tanks or whatever. They need to pull employees. Right now, the board just has the ability to reciprocate on drivers only because of the language. So I chose to take this opportunity and strike transportation and delivery examination for transport drivers only, and just simply say employee certification. So that would give the board the ability to reciprocate on anybody else, on a serviceman, on whatever classification of certification of employee that you needed to help that might be located in another state. We would have the ability to reciprocate and not have not have to test them again. Does everybody understand what we're doing there and why? Does anybody have any questions?
Nope.
Okay.
Sure.
That was 18. All right, going down to 21. Okay, in 21, this has to do with a permit. It says all owners, manager, or officials and employees connected to or listed on the Class 1 application must attend and we said basic training. That was our 40-hour school. I just changed that to say initial. And that just, that makes it congruent with what we're saying up above there with initial, reoccurring, and annual. And then 29. Okay. Y'all, this does not have to do with anything. I need you all to be okay with this or to say if you're not okay with this. One of the things that that I noticed right when I started back in 2016, they had redone the Class 1 permit. And this language of requiring a certified notarized financial statement was struck from the Class 1. That's the most important permit that we offer, that we issue. And yet it remains in all these other permits like Class 3. And I thought, if we're not requiring this for a Class 1, why are we requiring it for a Class 3? I don't know what this was in there for anyway. It just seems to me that it is just another barrier to entry. And so while we're going ahead and doing this, I thought this would be a good time to strike that and do away with that. Are there any questions? And Paul and Terry, I did not think to bring this up in our conversation when we had the subcommittee. As I was going through this, I just thought of that. So does any board member have a question or a problem with removing this requirement from our permit classifications? Again, it's already been removed and we don't require it for our Class 1.
I don't. I think they need to align. It doesn't make sense.
That was my
As in-
thinking.
I agree.
Okay. All right. And we don't need any motions or anything on this right now. Okay, so that is the language that I needed you all to review. Now, how this is going to affect, nothing else in our statute has been touched. And if you get back down then to our rules, those start right here on page 37. When you get to general order, state, local, petroleum, gas board, code rules and regulations. So that's where our rules actually start. Now we have a number of items that are contained in those rules that aren't germane to actually hands-on. For example, 58 is going to dictate where we have to have hydrostatic relief valves. 58 is going to dictate the UL listing of equipment. We have other things that are in our rules that don't affect that we need to maintain and not strike. An example would be the first one there, a waiver, right? The second one is definitions that we use in our rules and regulations. If we're going to be keeping some of these, then those definitions need to remain. Here would be an example of others that we would not strike. The refineries. The refinery shall furnish the distributor with a delivery slip showing a vapor pressure at the gas of 100 degrees Fahrenheit, right? That's language that we need our refineries to be held accountable to that would not be in 58. And every state's like this. Every state has their own rules that are outside of 58, might not be germane to 58, or they might want to replace something in 58. And so whenever you see in your draft underneath that the general order section that's not struck, that is the subcommittee's recommendation to maintain and hang on to. Another one would be safety supervisor. We have safety supervisors. 58 doesn't designate safety supervisors. We want to maintain and hang on to this. This is the individual that's a liaison between the company and the employees and the consumer. All right. So is everybody following me about we've got rules that are in the general order section that are unique to Arkansas that we want to maintain. Everybody understand that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, from talking with some of the other groups, it sounds like they have the same
They do.
that have adopted 58. So
That's right. Here's another one, area of operation. Well, 58 doesn't designate. That's not what they do. That's what we do. So we need to keep that. So whenever you see unstruck language in the general order, those are things that we need to hang on to. All right. Report of installation. We require a report of installation. All right. So that's in there. Starting with number 10 under general order containers. That's where we start striking language, and we remove that. And in your email, I gave you the page numbers of all those items that were struck. 7, 18, 21, 23, 24, 29, 40 through 78, and 81 through 88. All of that language has been struck because 58 is going to replace it.
Understood.
Okay, so I want to go down to one section, and we need to talk about this. Well, we need to talk about this right here, okay? The state has never allowed forklift cylinders, DOT forklift cylinders, to be filled off a bobtail. That is not enumerated, it's just in bold in our general order, right? You can't miss it. Filling of DOT forklift cylinders from a delivery truck is prohibited. 58 allows that. Do we want to keep this language, or do we want to take it out? Do we want to allow the filling of cylinders like every other state in the nation does off of bobtails, or do we want to keep this in here?
What was the reasoning driving both the bolding and the original entry? Do you know?
Yeah, I think we require all cylinders to be filled on scale. This and Brooke, this guarantees if it's done properly, putting it on a scale, that the cylinder is never overfilled. We already have some concerns with our privately held companies that are using forklifts and them being safe. When you go into a business and you start filling forklifts off a bobtail, you're relying solely on the 80% outage gauge to make sure that cylinder is not overfilled. And you couple that with the speed of delivery. Most of our cylinder pumps that are filling these are maybe at most 20 GPM. We've got bobtails that are delivering close to 70 gallons a minute. Not most of them are in the 55 to 60, but we do have some that can, they are put together and they can pump it. So I think those two things were the reason that the board in the past has prohibited this. The concern that a cylinder can be quickly overfilled because of the speed of the pump, and there's no guarantee that 80% outage stem, if you've been in the industry any length of time, everybody's grabbed a cylinder where the stem is in the bottom of the tank. So the only way we can guarantee is use of scales. That's why this was put in there. And I'll tell you, there's been some contention over the years.
Kevin Gordon speaking, with some of the history we've had, I've worked in multiple states, in Georgia, Florida, And then, of course, Arkansas too. And then, of course, Georgia and Florida, allow it. Alabama doesn't, and of course, Arkansas and Alabama are the same. So what I'm getting at is, with the history we've had and some of the problems that occurred, I guess, here recently with DOT cylinders, I just think we should keep it in there. And I've worked in the industry, especially in the forklift industry, and we use bobtails, and it's just not safe. I'll be honest with you, it's not. I prefer seeing an exchange and using a dispenser, or I just don't think filling off a truck is the safest way to go, and I encourage my customers not to do it. So sometimes you have to, and in some cases, but I just think that we should keep that rule in place.
Okay.
I agree.
I'd agree.
All right. What do you think, Drew?
Absolutely keep it in there.
All right. PC?
You already know there's no safe way to fill one from a truck.
I got you. Miss Brooke?
Definitely keep it in there. It sounds like that's really a non-discussion.
Well, it has been in the past. I just wanted to make sure that mine's hadn't changed. Okay. So we'll keep that. And then the other thing that I wanted us to talk about, when it comes to 58 and 54, and we get into leak check and pressure testing, I think everybody that's been in the industry for any length of time understands that there's a difference in what Arkansas has required and what 58 and 54 require. And I purposely left our pressure testing not being struck through, because I wanted to make sure that the board was okay with moving to 58 and 54 pressure testing, or if you all felt like we needed to maintain our pressure testing. And as soon as I get there, oh, it's way down here. What am I thinking about? Oh, I want to come back to bulkheads here in just a second, and that'll be my last thing. All right, here it is. Okay, so everybody knows, go ahead.
What page are you on?
Okay, our pressure testing in what I've handed out to you all starts on page 75. Okay, and that's where it starts talking about it. It starts talking about the pressure testing that has to go on with public buildings, schools, hospitals, theaters, motels, that kind of stuff. And then we have the language, no piping should be buried under public buildings. That's where it kind of starts talking about our pressure testing. And then we go on down to, all right, there's the poly. There it is. Let me back up. That's all right. 78. After new piping is installed, all outlets shall be capped and tested at a pressure of not less than 25 pounds for 30 minutes. Since the inception of this board, that's been our requirement, 25 pounds for 30 minutes on new installation, right? And then we require 11 inches at 3 minutes for a leak check. There's a difference. One's a pressure test, one's a leak check. 58 allows a 10-minute test at 3 PSI. So for their pressure test, they say a pressure test is good at 3 PSI for 10 minutes. We say we need to have 25 pounds for 30 minutes.
I'd prefer if we left ours in there.
That's what I'm saying. We're so used to that. I just don't think we need to change it.
Yeah, I think just
agree.
leave it.
Leave it
I
the
think
same.
leave it.
Right?
There's been times I've done tests with anything less than 25 pounds and you don't find either water has got the the line trapped, the gas trapped, and it's not showing up. Rust plugs it, whatever it may be, 25. Sometimes it's too low, but definitely doesn't need to be anything less than that on a new install.
Okay. And then, our leak check pretty much mirrors 54. You know, we allow that, at 11 inches for 3 minutes. So we're good with that. That's what 54 says. So the only thing that we will keep our pressure test, in there the same. Everybody good with that? Everybody okay with that?
I agree.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, moving back to the bulkhead for just a second. 58 requires a bulkhead. The language that they use is a little, there's some ambiguity there. We have, and if you allow me some latitude, I need to do some further studying. We spell out specifically where the bulkhead has to be located, how the ESVs need to be installed, the flex connectors that have to be on the downstream side, of the tank, in between the tank and the bulkhead, downstream of the ESV. So if that flex line blows out, you can shut the ESV out and you can stop the flow. Is everybody okay with me? And I can get a hold of our friends up in Missouri and get some. I'm just not familiar with 58. I went through it and I know that they require it. If it looks like it is substantially close to what we require, then it's already in 58. If it's not, I would like to make sure that we have our bulkhead language and we keep and maintain that. So that as plants are built, there's no ambiguity. Everybody understands this is what you have to do. Are you all okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
What do you know exactly about the difference in pamphlet 58 and I'm just in general, Kevin, what do you know that the difference is and what we require in the state of Arkansas versus what 58 is?
I can't tell you that.
Just in generality. I think there's a lot of language in there now. Because I just got through taking a test in that regard, and I think there's a lot of welding that's involved. So we'll definitely need to look at that.
Yeah, and I know that they require a bulkhead. I don't know what size of storage that starts with 58. I need to do that and get that to y'all. I don't know if they allow horizontal bulkheads or if they limit it to vertical bulkheads. We've always allowed 2. I wish we hadn't. I hate horizontal bulkheads. They don't, the shear point just doesn't operate as well as a vertical. And then the placement of the ESV valves, the placement of the flex lines. I don't know that spells that out in 58, and it very much might. I know that the bulkheads are required.
There's going to be some difference. But we need to look at that for sure.
There might be.
Discuss it. Yeah.
And even if they're different, even if they're different, maybe 58 requires a bulkhead to be installed on 4,000 or up, or 8,000 or up. I don't think that we're so concerned about that part of it, as we just need to make sure that the language is in there, that our inspectors can go to a permit holder and say, you got to do it this way. That's what I'm concerned about. And I know it's in there. I just have not had the time to spell it out to make sure that we're not going to get ourselves in trouble. So I left this unstruck, pending some further investigation into that.
Which brings up another point. I'm just sitting here thinking about what will the process be of getting our inspectors up to speed on NAPA 58?
Well, there will have to be a process put in place, and we'll have to do some training, right? Now, one good thing is that we have provided them with the latest edition of 58, every year. Every year that the new, every 4 years, the new edition comes out, they have it. And then I also maintain the handbook here, which goes into some deeper discussion about why a rule was put in place. And so they're not completely unfamiliar with 58. But we will need to go through and point out the changes and tell them going forward, this will be the way that we look at this now. And Paul, I think for the boards, I think it would be good for me to put together a training and procedure for our inspectors that you all approve. We're moving away from if we continue to go down this road and this goes through, and we end up promulgating and we move to 58, then we need to be assured that our inspectors know what they're doing and are up to speed. And the board should be able to say, yes, our inspectors do know this because we put this procedure in place and they've moved through it. And we can do that.
Yeah, I was just thinking about what that looks like and how we, the burden of that, like who will be doing that? Will that be internally struck, or is that something that we can assist them in that training through a third party or something? Train the trainer.
Yeah, that could be, Paul. And I think that once we start down this road and everybody's on board and it's proceeding, then I think that you all need to be involved and directing that effort through me. And I can suggest something, you all can suggest, and then you all will come to an agreement what you want to see, and then we'll put that in place and get it done.
Sounds fair. That was real time thinking about that. It hadn't crossed my mind until just then.
Absolutely. It's crossed mine.
I just want to be fair to the inspectors too.
Oh, absolutely. And they know so much of this already. I mean,
That's what I was going to say. A lot of times we might have a question. We call Perry and talk to him. And he'll tell us his name. He said, well, 58 says this. So
right.
I think they're pretty aware of what's in there.
Well, that's great. I just want to be sensitive to that also. Like, okay, we're moving to this. And then the inspectors are like, okay.
Yeah. We've been doing this I've been doing this for 20 years and now you're moving in another direction. And Paul, I do think there'll be some things in here that might be the case, but for the most part, these guys know 58. I would say 80, 90%, they're already familiar with. Okay. Terry, and again, what will happen now, and the reason that we needed Paul to make that motion, administratively, we've got a procedure as an agency that we need to respect and follow. And one of those is that prior to any motion being made on any rule change, we need the governor's approval to move forward. So I think that we have enough now that I can get something in the secretary's hand for him to consider and then move this to the governor. And then we'll wait for her approval before we take the next step. Is everybody good with that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Sounds good.
I assume, Kevin, that once all this, if we approve it and it goes all the way through, then I assume we would have a new code book that's printed out with all of these changes. Is that correct?
That's not correct, David, but I appreciate you bringing that up. We will have our code book that will enumerate our statute as amended. And then below the general order, we will still maintain our portion in our code book of those things that we want to hang on to that we just discussed. Outside of that, pamphlet 58, there are some, what's the word? You can't copy something. There's copyright. It's copyrighted. I just came up with, all right. So we will not be able to include word for word that code in our code book.
No, but I mean, when we go through it, will it show like these areas that you've struck all these things out, or will we print something?
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood what you were saying. No, we have not had a new code book printed since 2009.
No, I think what he's asking, Kevin, are we gonna have like a separate book and then like when people need, it will have like an Arkansas rules and regulations code book,
Absolutely.
and then we'll have the pamphlet 58, pamphlet 54. If somebody needs to, get educated, that's what we'd hand them, so to speak.
I think the first revision of that will have to show the struck language, won't it, Kevin?
Well, and I don't know what, I'm in new water here, so I'll have to figure that out. And, but it sounds like that there is some concern that we're going to come out with a new code book and all this stuff's going to be gone. And then they'll be replaced. And then people will wonder, well, I thought we had a rule. So it could be that we want to have a publication or maybe post something somewhere. I don't know that we'd want to invest in, thousands of code books that got this struck through language in it, but possibly have the document on our website.
Well,
where people
Kevin,
could download it.
I think I mentioned it in the last meeting. I mean to cut you off, sorry.
No, you're
But Florida does it. I mean, they really got it down pat. I mean, they just basically, they just put their own rules in a rules and regulation code book, and it's probably about 20 some odd pages. And then they just say, all right, everything else, is 58 and 54. And it's pretty simple, So they had their own rules, and then you just tie it into 58, 54, and that's it.
And
Would-
go
Would
ahead.
that be created since we're only adopting a specific version, meaning it gets updated and we're still referencing an older version?
Yes, that's exactly what would happen.
Yeah.
They would, everything would be done out of 2024. But then of course we've left in there that if something is adopted in a later edition that the board chooses, wants to adopt, we can do that by rule. And it will just go into rule and it will go into effect. So we have the ability to keep up with any new rules that might come through NFPA 58, Brooke. David, so we'll eventually end up with something what Gordon alluded to. We'll have a condensed version of our rules and regulations, and then everything else will be 58 and 54.
Well, it just seems like that code book is so outdated. I mean,
It's pretty outdated.
it's just all these different things that are in there. It just seems that we need something like Gordon's talking about to get us better up to date.
Right. And it would, when we rewrite it, it will be completely redone. It will be brought up to date as far as just pure aesthetics. I mean, it is not good, right? Easier to read. It will be enumerated. Here's something else that we gotta be cognizant. The state has been going through a codification process. Andrea, am I saying that right?
Yes.
All right. So every agency, they've taken their rules. I don't think there's ever been one document that has included 100% of all the state rules. And if you all can think about this, that's crazy nuts. 200 to 300 agencies that have been promulgating rules for, since statehood, whatever. And now they're trying to move everybody into one book. So there's people that have been working on this for years. And our agency has already went through this process. We've already got our spot in that book and it's enumerated, right? So we go to changing these things, it changes that. And that's a heavy lift to try to get. So even though we would be simplifying and redoing, that is why I put that new language under that dealers meetings and just struck through that language, because that's already there. That's already in the big book. And so when we start messing with our code book, we affect all kinds of other things, and we got to be conscious of that. But thankfully, now that we're part of E&E, we got some really smart people that got law degrees that can help us. We'll send it to them. In fact, by the end of the week, this will be over there, and they'll be putting this in the proper language for the secretary, and then to be sent to the governor. I don't know if what I just said
Sounds
had any
good.
reason behind it, but does anybody have any other questions? It went longer than what I thought. I'm sorry about that, but I
It's
do
all
appreciate,
been good. It's been very good, and I'm glad we've done this.
I appreciate y'all taking the time.
Well, it's a big change. It's a big change. So I think it definitely requires some time. So.
Yep. Okay. If nobody has anything else, I'll just add one thing. And I was, and I cannot believe that I forgot about this when we did the invocation before our meeting. But I don't know how many of y'all knew Todd Hunsucker. He owned,
Yeah, I knew-
Angie owned
I knew
Alliance.
Todd.
Gordon, did you know Todd?
I knew Todd well. What happened? I didn't know. Did something happen to him? I didn't know.
He passed away. He passed away, Gordon. And it was sudden. He was in a vehicle accident. It might have been brought on by a stroke while he was driving. But his funeral was Friday. And he was just a prince of a guy.
Yeah,
Keep
he was a super
Angie,
nice guy.
Justy, and yeah, keep that family in your prayers. And I wish I would have thought about that when we started our meeting. I would have done that. But I know that they're going to feel lost and hurting. He was 62 years old. He had just, him and Angie had recently sold their business to Ronnie Graves a few years ago. And Todd was out delivering, I don't know, he was doing a little bit of everything. He wasn't happy unless he was working. And he was delivering gravel somewhere in a 2-ton dump when it happened. But there were several industry people at the funeral. Me and Sharita had a chance to run over to it on Friday. Angie had to move it to the high school auditorium. And I was sitting there and caught myself counting, and there were almost 500 on the other side in the floor, and I couldn't see how many people, of course, was on the side where we were sitting. So, there were a lot of people well thought of, well respected, and he'll be missed. But just wanted to bring that up. Keep Angie and Justy and the family, the Hunsucker family, in your prayers. With that, Terry, that's unless anybody else has anything, I'll throw it back to you, Terry, to close us out.
Anyone have any other items before the board?
I think that covers it.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion second to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Everybody have a good day.
Hey,
Thank
very
you.
good.
All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate you all and everybody taking the time to be with us.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.